This is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Hello and welcome in to this edition of Heartlander News. My name is Chris Stigall. Now, what's the left up to? I've got a stack thick this week. I thought I'd run through some of these. Lawyers for the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk asked to seal evidence and parts of a key hearing. Lawyers for the man accused of killing Charlie urged a Utah judge on Tuesday to seal some evidence and bar reporters from public for parts of a key upcoming hearing. There's some real pessimists who believe that this guy and his attorneys could cleverly end up helping this guy, if not skate, certainly avoid the death penalty. A lot of questions surrounding it, and we've seen a judicial system that continues to almost show empathy for the criminal, the killer, the murderer. We've seen it in cases with many illegals. We've seen it in many illegal gun crimes. The Mangione story is another one. Luigi Mangione, who killed the United Healthcare CEO in broad daylight in Manhattan. You've seen and heard undoubtedly people outside the courtroom saying that they're glad the guy was murdered. Mangione is being made a folk hero of the American left. And now it appears that some of the materials that were seized from his backpack when they found him in that Pennsylvania McDonald's, a warrant was required to go through the backpack. Law enforcement who went through the backpack did not acquire a warrant. And so a lot of the evidence that was found in that backpack, his attorneys, and he's a wealthy guy, his attorneys are arguing that it's inadmissible in court. They may be successful, and there are people that speculate a guy like Mangione, who clearly murdered this guy in broad daylight, and maybe like an OJ thing, he may get to walk scot-free because of a technicality. So two things to watch. Meanwhile, the suspects in this San Diego shooting, didn't talk about this earlier in the week. Suspects have been identified in San Diego as 17-year-old Kane Clark and 18-year-old Caleb Vasquez, who both died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds after authorities confirmed Tuesday they are the suspected shooters in the attack on an Islamic center. And when I heard this story originally, I waited on it because I was curious to know what drove it. Obviously, immediately people went into hate crime mode. And then I started hearing analysis right away that it was two young men who had killed themselves after shooting up this Islamic center. And I find it interesting. Caleb Vasquez does not sound like your typical white guy. I don't know. Kane Clark perhaps does, but neither here nor there. The narrative was young, troubled men. And young men are being scapegoated right and left in this country, which I would also argue is why they're sometimes turning into paranoid and violent people, because they feel so put upon. And quite frankly, that's just true of many young men in this country who are going about their business doing nothing other than just being young, straight, white Christian men. And for this, they're being maligned by polite society on the left. And I do think we're driving a lot of young men to bitter, angry rage. I think that is true and a real problem. In this case, though, they're not turning conservative. In fact, just the opposite. They've become left-wing wackos. And the manifesto includes Nazi imagery, live stream video of the attack. I'm a straight male, he said. This is from the New York Post. I'm certainly not left-wing, nor am I right-wing, especially not with MAGA or Trump. Politically, I'd call myself a third positionist, specifically aligning most with National Socialism and eco-fascism. So that sounds a lot more like the left, even though they don't know it. National Socialism and eco-fascism is certainly nothing conservatives, Trump, or MAGA stand for. So more mentally ill leftists assassinating people with whom they have disagreement. Keep a sharp eye on this one. We talked earlier about the hantavirus. That seems to have ebbed. That didn't work. So now they're going toward Ebola. Here we go again. The ongoing Ebola surge has public health experts anxious about the world's capacity to contain its spread. I'm not trying to alarm anybody about it. I'm just saying, folks, keep a sharp eye. Hantavirus petered out. Ebola now on deck. As we head into an election, we know how well COVID worked before. Just keep a sharp eye. Don't let hysterics take root. Make sure you rip that mask off the next hysterical leftist you see if they're starting to ratchet things up on viruses. and other things. You start to see global, world, national, state health officials holding press conferences. Take a deep breath and slap the panic out of your friends and neighbors who want to take us back to that place where we're all held hostage. Just cautioning you, there is an appetite, particularly on the left, when they see that there could be looming defeat politically. There is an appetite on the left to try desperately to get you to panic. And if they can get you to panic, then you'll hand over a lot of security. You'll hand over a lot of oversight. You'll hand over just about anything if you think it'll protect you from catching Ebola or hantavirus or COVID. The left's gotten very, very good at panicking people to give up their rights. And Benjamin Franklin warned about that. Speaking of our founding, you can go back and find the classic quote. If you're willing to give up your liberty for the promise of security, then eventually you'll have neither. 198 Democrats oppose requiring parental consent for student gender changes in schools. Here's more of this pit of hell craziness that the left will also, again, what Mike Johnson said, this fall is going to be about sanity versus insanity, crazy versus common sense. That's what this fall is going to be about, period, full stop. 198 House Democrats voted against a bill requiring federally funded elementary and middle schools to get parental consent before changing a student's pronouns, preferred name, or sex-based accommodations. This from the Washington Examiner. House Republicans passed the legislation. 198 House Democrats opposed the measure. The bill, titled the Stopping Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act, would require parental consent to change a student's gender markers, pronouns, and preferred name, such as locker room or bathroom designation as well. Under the legislation, all elementary and middle school grades defined under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 as grades 5 through 8 would be included, and Democrats oppose this. Democrats would love nothing more than to have institutional separation between children and families. They would love to indoctrinate young people with this pit of hell lie that God makes mistakes and we can change their gender. And by the way, let's keep it a secret from mom and dad. Common sense versus crazy. I would say dark. And back to our jumping off point today. Spiritual battle, spiritual darkness. You think we're in it? Do you think we're in it? When you hear there are politicians that actually want to create a safe haven for public, taxpayer-supported schools to indoctrinate your children and keep it a secret from you. And back to Bezos. They're snatching money from your paycheck. They're sending it to public schools that aren't improving, but they're hell-bent on committing to separating you from your children and keeping secrets with your children and encouraging children to transition, perhaps, and use the bathroom and the pronouns of their choosing. You think we're not in a spiritual battle? Think again. And the left is very, very disappointed in John Fetterman, so much so that even his own team continues to fall away. The Pennsylvania Democrat has had serious staff retention problems as he's faced scrutiny over his health struggles and changing political brand. His chief of staff resigned this week, served on his team since he first came to Washington. Her official last day will be in the coming weeks. And Fetterman didn't have anything to say about that. And meanwhile, in Georgia, a guy named Dolezal there, a state senator, claims that the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who just lost his race, thankfully, real scumbag, told the state election board through its chair that observers would not be allowed in a central voter location known as the bunker, where the state receives, verifies, and reports vote totals. The Georgia state senator running for lieutenant governor this year has filed a lawsuit seeking a court order to allow a bipartisan observation of the state's election night operations center. Transparency should not be controversial, said the senator. Dolezal claims that the Secretary of State Raffensperger, who again just got his butt kicked by Republicans over the election of last here on Tuesday, Dolezal told the Secretary of State that the state election board, through its chair, observers won't be allowed into the central location known as the bunker. So here again, Raffensperger and Georgia election officials are trying to keep the headquarters of the vote count secret, only observable by them. Dolezal says, why can't we have bipartisan election observers. Well, you know why, because Georgia, Fulton County, Georgia, hello, they want to steal. And they want to do it without bipartisan watchdogs. And so good for Dolezal for bringing it up. We know the DOJ is actively investigating what went down in places like Pima County, Arizona, and Fulton County, Georgia. I suspect we're going to hear a lot more about that as the summer rolls on and we get closer to election season, and that's a very, very good thing. Let's go to some good news to close out the week. And there is actually quite a bit of it, as a matter of fact, in no particular order. Speaking of Georgia, Georgians handed Democrats a decisive defeat this week by reelecting two Republican-backed candidates in a pair of highly contested Supreme Court races. So these two, initially appointed to their positions by former GOP Governor Nathan Deal, received backing from the current GOP Governor Kemp. As the Federalist reported, the elections came a day after the federal appellate court unsealed damning findings. You can read this story in full. I'm not going to get into all the particulars of it. But anyway, the conservative candidates now sweep the Georgia Supreme Court elections. So Georgia is trending more conservative is my point. Again, you can read at the Federalist the very specifics about these two candidates if you want, if you're interested there in Georgia. But the bottom line is the scumbags like Raffensperger are getting tossed. People like Dolezal running for lieutenant governor are pushing for more election integrity. The FBI is looking under the hood of what went on in Florida. The Supreme Court, in Georgia. The Supreme Court in Georgia is getting more conservative. That's all good. A former federal prosecutor has been charged with stealing the sealed volume of the report prepared by then special counsel Jack Smith about the defunct criminal case against Donald Trump over his retention of classified government documents. Carmen Mercedes Lineberger, accused in a 4-count indictment unsealed yesterday of saving the sealed portion of Smith's report on her government-issued computer. That's good. More prosecutions. People that have been asking for more accountability, now we're starting to see it. Todd Blanche and this DOJ, we're starting to hear more stories like this. I suspect we will continue to hear more stories like this again through the summer and heading into the fall. The DOJ is now charging people inside their ranks, these scumbags that aided and abetted guys like Jack Smith. They're undoubtedly hoovering up this material, storing it, keeping it, waiting for a rainy day that they can weaponize it and use it. Good to see Trump's DOJ and the FBI cracking down on it. This is good news. President Donald Trump on Tuesday signed an executive order directing banks to more aggressively scrutinize illegals, closing a fiscal fence around American taxpayer interests and resources, and likely further incentivizing self-deportations. Scott Rasmussen telling Just the News, 80% of voters believe that illegal immigration is bad for America, and by the way, the flip side of it is 80% believe illegal immigration is good for, legal immigration is good for America. So let me say that again, just so I'm clear. Scott Rasmussen says 80% of everyone polled believe illegal immigration is bad, but that same 80% believe that legal immigration is good. So we are a generous and charitable and welcoming country. We just want it done the right way. Everybody understands that. It's not racist. Trump's Tuesday order, titled Restoring Integrity to America's Financial System, directs federal regulators and the Treasury to issue guidance strengthening banks' customer due diligence, identify red flags and suspicious activity linked to undocumented immigrants, and off-the-books wages, manage credit risks from extending loans and services to non-work authorized individuals. So, again, the fiscal burden of illegals disappearing now that President Trump is cracking down on the border and forcing institutions to scrutinize their lending practices. No money flowing into foreign countries courtesy of illegals who have broken into the country. Trump turning the screws on that, and the American people stand with him. Trump RX adds more than 600 generic drugs, and Mark Cuban was part of the rollout this week. Did you see this? President Trump announcing the addition of more than 600 generic drugs to his drug coupon platform, Trump RX. I'm thrilled to announce, this is the quote directly from Trump, we're increasing the number of drugs available on Trump RX by nearly 7 times. Working with industry partners, cost-effective generic drugs are often available at just a tiny fraction of the price of their brand name equivalents, and in theory, they're the same thing. The administration launching Trump RX in February with 43 branded prescriptions, and Mark Cuban was there to tout it. He owns a similar business to Trump RX called Cost Plus Drugs. Previously praised the project, writing on social media, "In my opinion, anything that saves patients money is a win." So all these left-wing successful guys who hated Trump or certainly politicked against him now suddenly finding friendship with him. I think that's interesting. From the accountability front, the post-millennial Harmeet Dhillon, brilliant lady, heads the Civil Affairs Division of the FBI, or the Civil Rights Division, I should say, at DOJ, not FBI. Harmeet Dhillon launches investigation into Washington state over housing men in women's prisons. Right on. This follows several accusations from female prisoners alleging that male inmates who identify as trans have committed various crimes against them, including sexual abuse. Of course they have. You put men pretending to be women in women's prisons, and then these women get assaulted, and people are shocked? No, they're not. This social experiment is garbage. Harmeet Dhillon is actually stepping in to defend women prisoners, folks. Think of that. This evil, wicked Trump administration is actually stepping in to defend women in prison because leftists think men can be women. And as it turns out, men who pretend they're women and want to mill about with women are often predators and mentally ill and abusive and potentially rapists or worse. I can't even believe we're here and having to discuss this as though it's a legitimate news item, but here we are. And that's, again, what Mike Johnson was saying. That's what this election is about this fall. Crazy or common sense. Panda Express. Never eaten there in my life. Have you? I've had Raisin Cane's. I have not had Panda Express. They promise now a more welcoming experience after a MAGA hat-wearing vlogger says he was kicked out. Video of the incident shows two employees outside the restaurant where the vlogger continued to record, telling him he had to leave. He claims these Panda Express employees called cops on him because he was wearing a MAGA hat. A Panda restaurant group spokesperson said they're reviewing the details. "We want everyone who walks into Panda Express to feel welcome and treated with respect." Chris Sims describes himself on X as a disaffected liberal turned conservative, said in a post he and another vlogger were kicked out of the location for wearing a hat and giving a cook a thumbs up. He asked the cook whether there was an issue. The cook said his MAGA hat was the problem. Video of the incident that Sims posted shows two Panda Express employees outside the restaurant where Sims continued to record. The employees told the pair to leave. Police showed up to talk to the employees, who told the officers the pair refused to leave. They deny they refused to leave, so on and so forth. Do we know where that was from? Which? They don't tell us where. They don't tell us the location. Okay. Well, anyway, the Panda Express people say, no. You're welcome to wear your MAGA hat inside. I guess Panda Express corporate is smart enough to know that MAGA people like Panda Express too. 23 attorneys general are probing Federal Judicial Center's distribution of biased climate guide to judges. Again, crazy or common sense. A coalition of state attorneys general demanding answers about the Federal Judicial Center's distribution of a science manual to federal judges that contained citations to left-wing climate activists. 23 attorneys general sent a letter to look into this thing called a reference manual on scientific education. The manual is designed to guide and inform federal judges in their assessment of science-related matters in cases that come before the bench. So left-wing, global warming dreck, Green New Deal propaganda dreck being fed to judges as fact, as science. And these federal judges, who we know are overwhelmingly hostile to Donald Trump and conservatives anyway, now being fed this propaganda that they are ostensibly intended to use to cite in court cases against business, industry, uphold regulations that choke jobs and choke business. The federal judiciary being fed more left-wing propaganda is nothing that we need. Good to see these 23 state attorneys general, all of them conservatives, of course, going after this document. I like it. Speaking of the lie of global warming, Honda has posted their first ever annual loss in nearly 70 years. Why? Well, because as it turns out, people don't want these stupid plug-in cars. People do not believe their cars are warming the planet. The ship has sailed on this thing. It is consistently polled as one of the dead last priorities or concerns of the American electorate. And Honda Motor has now posted their first ever annual loss. The Japanese car company's bet on electric vehicle sales left it with $9 billion in restructuring costs due to low demand and Trump's Made in America policies. So another bank shot win on both the politics of the day and Trump's desire to bring manufacturing back home. EV demand, electronic vehicle, has declined considerably due to the rollback of environmental regulations in the United States and other factors, says Honda. So you see, rules and regs based on this stupid, fictitious Green New Deal, global warming crap. Donald Trump, Lee Zeldin at EPA, hack. They start raising tariffs overseas, and look what's happened. People turn away from these EV mandates. They don't want to buy them, so they're not going to buy them for the tax credit and the tax incentive. Builders, car makers, manufacturers, they don't have to adhere to all this eco-wacko crap. And so companies that tried to lean into the government rejiggering of the economy by making EVs, they took a bath. They bet on the wrong horse. They should have bet on Donald Trump. They should have bet on MAGA. The Green New Deal and the American left have lost. They've lost big time. Companies are being rescued from it, and companies that bet on it are losing their shirts, and that's a good thing. And then finally, the White House also endorsed the House's amended housing package after lawmakers agreed to mirror a Senate bill that bans private equity ownership of single-family homes. Right on. This is good. When we talk about housing affordability, big banks and investment firms buying up single-family homes, not good. And the House's amended package is set for a vote this week. If they didn't already vote on it yesterday, I didn't see if they did. The House version now includes an investor ban provision akin to the Senate, limiting private equity ownership of single-family homes, a key agenda of President Trump's. And let's see the specifics to it. The new House bill still doesn't match the Senate's language requiring large investors to sell long-term rental properties. The latest change came minutes after labor unions raised concerns about lax protections for construction workers, on and on and on. Anyway, this is very, very good news. It sounds like Republicans in the House, anyway, are serious about joining President Trump and limiting the investor class and big banks from buying up single-family homes. In theory, they will either have to divest or sell, and that will increase the market. You know, President Trump's in this spot where people who own a home, if you own a home now, nobody wants to lose their equity. You start to flood the market with a bunch of homes. You will see diminished returns for people that are holding homes with equity in it. But if you can shake loose some of the existing homes in the market that have been hoovered up by investment, that could be a good thing. That will increase supply at least a little bit, hopefully lowering interest rates for loans, but not just torpedo the equity that you might already have built up in your home if, in fact, you're looking down the barrel of maybe selling it in the next 10 years or so and cashing out. It's a delicate balance. It's tough. It's a tough thing to do. And I tell you what, President Trump is trying to undo a lot of economic ruin. And again, less than a year and a half. It is a tall order, but I believe he's the man to do it. And that's going to do it for us today from America's Heartland. Be sure to stay close by subscribing to the Heartlander News channel here on YouTube, and you'll get a new show every time we make one. And be sure, give us a like and comment too if you can. We're really glad to have you along. Hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you back here next time on Heartlander News.